Hello everyone and welcome to the Minnesota Football 2024 preview. So in this one we'll go ahead and look at the stats for Minnesota and also their kind of look through a rundown of their schedule as we've done with so far Rutgers and Illinois. So yeah, let's go ahead and look at Minnesota. Obviously they are coached by PJ Fleck and he is going into his 8th season as the head coach for the Gophers. He has a record of 50-34 and kind of a fun fact, he's undefeated in bowl games as they sit at 5-0. And you could say, well, obviously, like last year, they played Bowling Green. But if you look at the other 4 games that he's won, they've been against, I guess, what you call P4 opponents. I guess not Power 5, it's Power 4 now, since obviously the Pac-2 is, I don't know what they are considered, but either way. Yeah, so let's go ahead now and look at the kind of the key players and what their stats are for Minnesota. So quarterback will be Max Brosmer. He is the projected starter for them at quarterback. Last year at FCS New Hampshire, he threw for a completion percentage of 64. He threw for 3,459 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. So pretty decent stat line, but again, obviously, there's going to be a jump to see, from the FCS to the FBS, so it'll be interesting to see how he plays. At running back, their 2 options are Darius Taylor and Marcus Major. Taylor led the team in rushing last year with 799 yards on 138 carries, and he got 5 touchdowns. Major last year played at Oklahoma. He had 78 carries for 308 yards and a touchdown. At wide receiver, their top 3 projected wide receivers are Daniel Jackson, Christian Driver, and Elijah Spencer. Jackson is he's really the only one to have kind of experience so far. He actually led the team in receiving last year with 59 receptions for 831 yards and 8 touchdowns. Did I say that wrong? Okay, that was Daniel Jackson. I don't know if I accidentally said Driver or not. Either way, that was Daniel Jackson who led the team in receiving last year. But either way, Christian Driver, he's a transfer from Penn State. Really didn't get too much playing time last year. Only had 1 reception for 8 yards. So, yeah, kind of a unknown. Then finally, Elijah Spencer. He is a transfer from Charlotte. He has 9 receptions for 65 yards and 3 touchdowns last year. So, again, not too much of a sample size. But it's one of those things where in college football, you plug and play into the right offense, and sometimes you can go from a guy who isn't contributing too much to all of a sudden one of the better guys in college football. Again, I would like to say an example of that would be like, I'm a Purdue fan, so look at Charlie Jones a couple years ago. Went from barely getting touches to Iowa to all of a sudden becoming one of the best wide receivers in college football with Purdue. Anyway, now let's look at tight end. So for the Gophers, Nick Collerup, he had 3 receptions for 12 yards last season. In the season before that, he really didn't do much either. He only had 2 receptions for 33 yards or something like that. So it was 2 receptions for 22 yards. Sorry about that. So not too much contribution, but again, as I said for the last thing, you never know. We'll see. On offense, Phil Steele's projections have them scoring about 29 points per game, and then on defense, kind of moving along. Jack Henderson, who had 59 tackles last year, comes back, and he also had kind of leads returning players with 2 interceptions on last year. So kind of a dual threat there. Ja Joyner, he is also back as he led the team with 7.5 sacks. On defense, the projections have them giving up about 26.5 points and 351.1 yards or 0.7 yards of total offense a game. Now let's go ahead and look at the schedule for the Gophers. Obviously, they're going to want to keep up their momentum from last year, or their momentum from last year. Obviously, the second half of the season wasn't too great. They lost 4 in a row, but they were able to get the bowl win against Bowling Green, kind of put themselves back on a more positive route, and they're going to try to continue that momentum kind of moving forward here. But let's go ahead and look at week 1 where they will play North Carolina at home. Obviously, this is going to be a big one. These are 2 teams that are kind of in the same spot where they're fringe bowl teams, so it'll be a good measuring stick game and see where both these teams end up. And it's like I said in the last couple videos, it's a game where if you're going to go to a bowl game, it's one you gotta find a way to win. Then on September 7th, they get to play their FCS opponent, the Rhode Island Rams, at home, which that should be an easy win, obviously, an FCS opponent. But then they wrap up their non-conference slate against Nevada on September 14th. Again, that shouldn't be too hard. Nevada, although they've kind of had some pretty decent teams over the years, this time lately they haven't been as good. But then after playing the Wolfpack, they open up Big Ten play against Iowa at home on September 21st. This should be a pretty good game. Obviously, these 2 teams both play that smash mouth football. Obviously, both of them, given Minnesota, as we've talked about, Minnesota's kind of their lack of experience and lack of wide receiver depth, so to say. I don't mean to say it that way. I mean, like, obviously they're unknown in that position, so they're going to be more going to rely a lot on those two running backs to play well. And obviously, Iowa is what Iowa is, so this should be a grind them out fun, kind of a old Big Ten style 3-yard in a cloud of dust kind of game. So it should be interesting. Then things will get difficult for a couple weeks as they will first hit the road to play the defending champs Michigan Wolverines on September 28th. Then after that, they get to play USC, which should be another kind of rough game for them. Obviously, USC will probably be locked and reloaded. Hopefully, they can, for them, have a better defense. And, obviously on offense, Lincoln Riley has had some pretty good quarterbacks, and I guarantee you, again, we won't have a problem finding that. But either way, then after that, they get to go to LA to play the UCLA Bruins, which should be another tough opponent. Obviously, they were at 8-5 last year, a pretty decent UCLA team. Then obviously then another game against. Then they play the Maryland Terrapins on Saturday, October 22nd. Then it's on November 2nd. It's one of those big games. It's going to be a game where it's one of those 50-50 games. If you're going to go to a bowl game, you got to win a couple of them, and this is one of them. Playing Illinois, and then after that, they go to Piscataway in another one of those games to play the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, and then they get to come home against Penn State, where obviously this is going to be a tough game. Although they do get a bye before it, it's going to be tough. Let's be honest. Penn State's going to be a fringe playoff team. If they can, the goal of this game is to keep it close, keep it respectable, and maybe find some miracle way to pull it out late. Then finally on November 30th, they get to battle for the axe against the Wisconsin Badgers at Camp Randall. This one could be the difference between them going to a bowl game or not. And obviously Wisconsin, I do feel as if they're kind of going to at least should be back to at least being a team where you just don't like to see them on the schedule. I assume they'll probably be back to their 8-4 kind of selves, where they're very competitive, although they're not the greatest. They still give you a scare and are capable of beating anybody on any day. But anyway, again, kind of as I've said for kind of Illinois and Rutgers, this is a schedule where it's going to come down to how they play against those teams that are similar in talent to them. If they can win a couple of those, they'll probably go to a bowl game. If not, it ain't happening. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.